kind of jabbed my finger down on the table in front of him. And I said, "That's not BS." I cursed in that moment. And all of a sudden, he thought I was interesting.
There is just one question that either somebody else asks us or we ask us. It changes a lot of things for us if we pay attention.
I wasn't willing to stab my best friend in the back.
Investors, they would like to bet on the founders, over product ideas. Of course, the product idea has to be interesting, but then the founder who can make it, who they believe this person would make it. So that is also something as you are building the product idea, it's also very important to build your own self, work on yourself as much as you work on your business. In fact, more than that.
I was recently asked what my next book will be. The honest answer is my next book is going to be a film.
Big dreams don't come quietly.
They demand risk.
They demand fire. They demand transformation. Welcome to The Corporate Life, Billion-Dollar Conversations. Hosted by Hina Siddiqui, CEO and founder of Corporate Influence Media, creator of Capital Stage Credibility Positioning, 4-time Global Award winner, featured across more than 700 global outlets, and heard in 94 countries. Join us as we sit with tech CEOs, multi-million-dollar entrepreneurs, and leading investors, the people building what's next. Here, success isn't a headline. It's a human story. The turning points, reinventions, failures, breakthroughs, and bold decisions that change everything. Because every life is a movie, and you're the star of yours.
Mike, every life is a movie and every movie has a story. So tell us your cinematic story of the entrepreneur who built 6 companies in Silicon Valley and all acquired by now. And now you are writing a book. In fact, the book is already out, I guess.
It is. It came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. So I'm excited to hear your story.
So really, my story starts outside of Silicon Valley. I was a senior in college. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do after graduation. Had an opportunity to interview for a job. I wasn't well prepared for the interview. It was with the management consulting firm called McKinsey and Company. And the first 15 minutes of the interview went terribly. The person I was interviewing me, I think, was bored and tired of having interviewed people for 2 straight days. And he asked me then a key question. He said, "What are your life goals?" And because he wasn't asking about my business goals or my professional goals, I gave an answer that I think he found unexpected. I talked about my interest in traveling and living in different places and eventually getting married and having a family and so on. It gave me a very strange look. And this was the pivotal moment. I leaned forward and I kind of jabbed my finger down on the table in front of him. And I said, "That's not BS." I didn't actually say BS. I said the word. But uncharacteristically of me, I cursed in that moment. And all of a sudden, he thought I was interesting. He got much more animated. The rest of the interview went well. I was invited to interview next out in San Francisco, ended up getting the job. Fast forward 2 years later, because I had that job, I was able to get a job in Australia.
Okay.
Went down to Australia, ended up 5 days in meeting my wife. And if you really look at my life now, who I'm married to, who my kids are, all of it goes back to that interview where I cursed. And even the fact that when I went out to the San Francisco office of that firm after I got the job, I spent most of that year consulting at Apple. And that was where I really decided I wanted to be in Silicon Valley. So in some sense, that was the key moment. It was a cinematic moment that defined the rest of my life.
Interesting. This is really interesting. I believe that there is just one question that either somebody else asks us or we ask us. It changes a lot of things for us if we pay attention.
I think that's the key. The last part is listening and paying attention,
Yeah.
which is something that I haven't always done as well as I should have. But there are moments where I found when you kind of listen to the universe in a way that you tend to find your way.
I believe that 100%. Universe is always guiding us. I know that it might be a little tricky or maybe too illogical for tech CEOs or, the people who are listening to us right now or watching us right now. But I believe that there's always something beyond logic. Universe is always supporting us, always guiding us through. If we pay attention, the route is very short. Otherwise, we keep on taking the long distances and trial and hit and errors and stuff like this. Of course, there would be journey. There, of course, there would be challenges and lessons, but then they can be shortened a lot if you pay attention.
Yeah, I agree with that. And kind of
Yeah.
the corollary to that in my own life
Yeah.
is that most of the best things that have happened to me have been unexpected and
Yeah.
spontaneous as opposed to being planned, even
Yeah.
though by nature I'm somebody who plans a lot. And in a
Yeah.
business context, I'm somebody who plans a lot. Nonetheless, if asked what are the most significant moments in my life, I would have to say that they weren't planned.
Yes. So you have been raised in Italy and Boston. So what that dual identity gave you?
Well, I only lived in Italy when I was a very little kid, but it had an impact on me because as I grew up, my earliest memories were of living in a country other than the United States, where I spent most of my time. And that, I think, is one of the main reasons I ended up later going to Australia, where I met my wife, and ultimately having a very international um, sensibility
Hmm.
and life in a lot of ways. It's because those earliest memories were of living in Italy. Other than Boston, I also moved a lot when I was little. I lived in Boston, I lived in New York, I lived in California. Every few years, the family would move. I think sometimes when people experience that when they're older, they decide that they don't want to move at all.
Hmm.
Whereas I, I've I embraced it. I like going to different places. I like trying different things, and I like
Hmm.
thinking of new ideas. And all of that was reinforced by an upbringing where we were moving a lot.
Yeah. So every country has a culture, right? So maybe you were too small, that's fine. But then I think that these were the formative years. And when you grasp something in those formative years, that stays with you for a longer time. What do you think about that? Are you still do you still think that you are an Italian somewhere?
Well, my DNA test suggests that I am a little bit actually, but generally, I don't think of myself that way. But
Okay.
I do think of myself as more of a citizen of the world as opposed to a citizen of a specific country.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things I learned from the earliest age was that people are all the same.
Yeah.
There are different cultures, different customs, and so on, but fundamentally, we're all the same.
Yeah. Emotions are always the same wherever you go in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
People have the same kind of emotions, yeah. We all
Yeah,
have fears, we all have goals, we all have vision, we all have challenges, and we feel a certain way. We all want love and growth and a lot of things in common. So it's common for every person in this entire world.
I
Yeah. So
completely agree. I completely agree with that. 100%.
so tell me about your first company. How did you build that in Silicon Valley, and how was that journey like?
I had wanted to become a full-time entrepreneur for quite a long time,
Mm-hmm.
but it took a while, and it was complicated by the fact that I went to Australia, met my wife, and
Yeah.
we needed to logistically figure out how to be in the same place. So what eventually motivated it was that my wife got pregnant with our first kid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was living in San Francisco. I was commuting about an hour to work each day. I was trying to do entrepreneurial things on the side, and I was on the verge of becoming a parent. And what I realized was I couldn't do everything. And so I decided to leave my job and start a company with my wife's blessing and initially financial support because she
Yeah.
was also working in a job. And that was where it got started. The specific idea emerged out of some of the things that I was experiencing in my job. I was working for Intuit, uh, and what I saw was that they weren't doing very much at the time in small business finance, and the internet was just emerging. And I thought, oh, there's probably an opportunity in internet-based small business financial services.
Yeah.
And so that was the reason for focusing there. I literally started the company. I co-founded it the same day my wife went into labor with
Okay.
our son, who's now, as of last month, 30 years
Wow.
old. So it's a while
Yeah.
ago now. But it was a real risk-taking exercise and a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah, of course. Risk taking and a lot of fun. That is the entrepreneurial journey. It's like every time a new challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why did you decide you would like this company to be acquired?
Well, in that specific case, it ended up being about a 10-year odyssey. What we initially started the business doing ended up shifting into something different. So initially it was small business financial services generally, ended up realizing that the better opportunity was just in small business lending. And then ultimately, after raising a lot of money and getting a lot of attention, we weren't able to get the microeconomics of the business to work as well as we hoped. So we had to pivot it again. And that was the story for 9 or 10 years. We pivoted and pivoted and pivoted, kept changing the model. So eventually, after about 10 years, I didn't see a way to build a big company out of it, but we had built an interesting business
Mm-hmm.
and it made sense to sell it. And we also had venture capital investors that didn't want to just try to build it forever. They were interested in getting a return.
Yeah.
So it made sense to sell it, and that's how it came about.
Right, right. So, how difficult or easy was it to raise your first funding?
That's a great question because it was almost very easy, and then it
Mm-hmm.
turned out to be very difficult. So it was almost very easy because I was introduced to somebody early on in the process who really liked what we were doing and introduced us to a variety of other angel investors who were also interested.
Mm-hmm.
But the person who had made this introduction, I talk about this in my book, he had very specific ideas about who should run the company.
Okay.
And we had designated my co-founder as the CEO initially. And this investor didn't think that was a good idea. And he didn't particularly like my co-founder.
Hmm.
There was a meeting where the investor left unhappy. And so in the end, he basically told me that he would only invest and only recommend that others invest if my co-founder, who also happened to be my best friend,
Okay.
were kicked out of the company
Mm-hmm.
and I became the CEO. And I said no to that. I wasn't
Okay.
willing to, stab my best friend in the back.
Yeah.
And so the upshot of that was that for a couple of years, we weren't able to raise money.
Okay.
So somewhat my choice, but I wasn't willing to raise money on any terms. I had certain, I would say, ethical requirements, and I was willing to wait if necessary to do what I thought was right.
Right. So with that, I am getting this thought that in today's world as well, like where there are lots of AI startups and other startups as well. So investors they would like to bet on the founders over product ideas. Of course, the product idea has to be interesting, but then the founder who can make it, who they
Yeah.
believe this person would make it. So that is also something as you are building the product idea, it's also very important to build your own self, work on yourself as much as you work on your business. In fact, more than that, so that you become that person the investors can bet on you.
Yeah, I think that's true. Although sometimes investors are fairly close-minded
Yeah,
about
yeah. I know,
what they
yes.
regard as acceptable.
Right.
In this specific case, had the
Of
investor
course.
had he said to me,
Yeah.
respectfully, I think you would be the better CEO. Why don't you become the CEO? We would have done it. The problem was that he said, I want you to be the CEO and I want you
Yeah.
to kick out the other person. I thought, nah, I'm
Yeah.
not doing that. I'm not
Yeah.
comfortable with that.
So, how was that decision like to sell the company? How that phase went for you?
It was very challenging. In some sense, what I've found is that every stage is challenging all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
We initially had an opportunity to sell the company, and I was too aggressive in the negotiation. And the upshot is that it didn't work out. And then it took us another 5 or 6 years before we had another opportunity to sell the company.
Okay.
And that time, I realized when we got into due diligence that a contract had been written that I had actually been the person who reviewed, which had some terms which were not well written. And depending on how you interpreted the terms, it could be argued that it prevented us from selling the company.
Mm.
And so there were some moments of anxiety, but in the end, we were able to work through that and then get the deal done. It was hard. It was stressful. It's always better if you're in a situation where you're trying to sell a company where you have multiple buyers
Of course.
and you're playing them off against each other. But if you
Right.
ever find yourself in a situation where there's one,
Mm.
you kind of have to get the deal done
Yes.
or there's no deal. And I've been in that situation multiple times. And it's difficult because you can't really tell the other party that they're the only one because then
Mm.
you lose all leverage.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's only one.
Yeah.
And if you
Correct.
overplay the hand, pay a cost.
Right. So when you build your other companies and you then sell them later on, like all 6 companies got
Yeah.
acquired, you built, then I think that must have given you some direction and lessons for the next one and the next one and the next one to raise the funding as well as at the time of selling. So did that help?
Yeah. You definitely get better the more times you've done it.
Yeah.
You're more patient, I would say. And that's the biggest thing is that I think a lot of people who become entrepreneurs are actually not very patient people at
Mm.
heart.
Yeah.
And I'm not really. Or maybe I
Yeah.
am at this point. Maybe I've taught myself to be patient over the last few
But I
decades.
believe,
But
Mike, that an entrepreneur cannot be patient.
that's the issue, right? You need to be constructively impatient.
Yeah,
But when you get
exactly.
into a negotiation to sell the company,
Yes.
that's exactly the issue is that because an entrepreneur can't be patient and you're used to not being patient,
Yeah.
if you're impatient in the negotiation, you'll usually lose the negotiation. And so it's hard. You
I
have to
love
force
that.
yourself to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. I
A lot of
resonate
times you have to
with,
wait.
yeah.
Yeah.
I resonate with what you're saying here is that impatience. Like, for example, I am quite impatient when it comes to my business. And of course, that's a personality once you begin an entrepreneur. So the moment you get an idea, you need to execute it in the next 24 hours, right? You can't hold it for long.
Right.
So this is I always do all the time that just get out there, even if it's imperfect, just take some action and step, which is a good thing. But in
Yeah.
some scenarios, this is not a so good thing where you need to be patient. Like, in some areas, like as you said very beautifully, that in negotiations or the time of selling, you need to be a little bit patient. But actually, that is not the trait as an entrepreneur you have. So you need to be exercise that or maybe learn that. So yeah, it's interesting and I resonate with this part.
Yeah. So, expanding on that,
Yeah.
what I learned through the years is that, yes, I'm impatient, but when I'm negotiating with people in this sort of context, they're also impatient.
Yeah. Right.
And there's a real value in being more patient than they are if you're in a
Yes.
negotiation
Correct.
and just waiting and staying quiet. And I write about this in the book. I quote this is one of the Star Trek movies where the bad guy says, "Let them eat static." That is his response to
Yeah.
the request for communications. And I found that if you're patient in that specific context, very often you'll end up with a better deal
Yeah.
because the other person will be impatient and
Exactly.
they'll
I
be more
love that.
flexible than they otherwise might be.
This is a very valuable advice, I think, to everybody who's listening or watching us right now. It's like you just need to learn to be patient at the right times because there
Right.
are
That's a good way to
sometimes
say it.
it serves to be impatient, but sometimes it really helps to be patient with things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, you say that your life has been quite like lucky. You have been lucky throughout your life. So would you like to give some examples of that or like to talk about it?
I have been very lucky, although there have been certainly times in my life where I've not felt lucky. So I've
Uh,
had both sides of that. But in the bigger picture, I mean, I was fortunate to have great parents and have a terrific household that I grew up in, and
mm,
have parents who I think showed me a tremendous amount of support. I've been very fortunate in my wife and my family. And then from a professional standpoint, I've more or less had the chance to pursue a career that really interested me and to try to be creative and create things or be part of creating things that haven't existed before, which is what I'm very passionate about.
mm,
And it hasn't always worked, but it's worked more than it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
And so I'm very grateful to have had that type of opportunity and flexibility. So yeah, I think in the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
I've been extremely lucky.
This is a great filter to have, when we say that, like we have filters in our life that we call beliefs. So when we have this filter, like, okay, I am lucky. So then we actually look at things from that perspective and things change automatically because we have that belief or filter that we are lucky. So it's a great belief to have.
I agree with that. Although I will say, I think I'm a realist. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things that I've learned through these different companies is that a lot of things go wrong. And so, in some sense, I've trained myself to believe that when things are really good, that things will get worse. And I've
Mm,
also trained myself to believe when things are bad, that things will get better.
yeah.
So I,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, I try to stay very level certainly in my entrepreneurial life, because it's the best way to cope with the ups and downs that inevitably
Yeah.
arise.
Yeah, it's the best way to cope with the ups and downs. And of course, things will go wrong. There's nothing like a rosy picture. And this is my favorite line. I talk to my friends about this all the time. Like, we're not here to do a picnic on Earth, right? We have some. We are here to do something, some lessons to learn, and we learn lessons through challenges. So, like in business also, there would be things that would happen which we would not like sometimes. Uh, but the biggest breakthroughs come after the chaotic situations. And I was recently talking to a guest on the podcast about this. And I also I realized that, okay, some of my biggest breakthroughs came only after I was having some dark moments or some
Yeah.
chaotic situations.
And a lot of times it means more when you are able to deal with adversity
Yeah.
and come through that successfully.
Yeah, yeah. So, any kind of challenges or such adversity you can think of in your entrepreneurial phase while you
I
were
mean,
building
I've
companies?
had all sorts of adversity. In my second company, we struggled for a few years and then finally started succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
And we grew very, very rapidly from nothing to a $30 million run rate in less than a
Wow.
year.
Mm.
And then Congress passed the law that effectively legislated our business model out of existence.
Okay.
They imposed price controls on debit card fees, and our business was built around debit card fees. And so that was a business that would have been worth an enormous amount of money. And just like that, we woke up one day and the business was almost worthless. And yeah, we
Mm.
sold it, but we didn't sell it for very much. That's one example. But I've had the opposite happen as well. My most recent company, we were trying to go public, and we came very close to going public, and then COVID hit. And once
Mm.
COVID hit, we weren't able to go public anymore.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, that's really just very unfortunate. But then all of a sudden, a big company showed up and paid us a lot of money, more money than we would have made had
Yeah.
we gone public. And so it ended up being a blessing in the end,
Yeah.
that the IPO didn't work. So I've experienced both sides of it. The one constant is adversity.
Right.
So
Right.
sometimes things work out better than other times. In the long run, I think if you stick to it and keep working and keep adapting, things tend to work out well in the end.
Yeah.
At
And
least
in
that's been my
chaotic
experience.
situations like this, you're talking about adversity, it's very easy to get carried away and make some difficult, like some, how do I say that? Some decisions that don't work for us. So when
Yeah.
you make decisions, you talk about that, like when you make decisions, like keep the emotions out of that. So just talk a bit about that. How do you make decisions?
I mean, I strongly believe that decisions need to be made based on analysis and
Yeah.
not the emotion of the moment.
Yeah.
And I individually try to do that. And then in the teams that I manage, I try to instill that sense that don't panic, just try to work the problem. Let's try to figure out what the best answer is. And the best answer is based on analysis. It's not based on whether it makes us feel good in the moment.
Yeah.
It's and I think that's important to try to stay level the expression I've heard is be like sand.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
and I think that's a good way to approach
that's interesting. Yeah,
difficult decision-making moments.
right. So your book title is Failure is an Option. Why that title?
Well, there's a history to it. So at the time when I started my first technology company with my friend Scott, it was around the time that the movie Apollo 13 came out. And that has a famous quote in it, which is failure is not an option.
Okay.
And we decided that was going to be our mantra. And so anytime any adversity struck, we would remind each other that failure is not an option. But the truth is, we then struggled for the next several years. And so we started joking to each other that, well, failure is actually an option.
Yeah.
And there were some days we thought that success was not an option. But I came out of that experience realizing that no matter how hard you work and no matter how hard your team works and no matter how good of a job you do, sometimes things don't work out as well as you want them
Yeah.
to. And you have to figure out a way through that. And so it means that failure is definitely possible. It's definitely an option. Now, what you do with that is a different question.
Correct.
How you react to it, how you
I love
adjust,
that.
how you
Yeah.
adapt. But that's the reason for naming the book that is. It's trying to say that success isn't linear. And you don't always have control over it. You have
Mm.
control over the effort you make. You don't have control over the results, but you can control how hard you try and what sort of adjustments you make along the way.
Yeah.
So that's the reason for the name.
It's a beautiful title, and in fact, it's a message because in this world where we put so much pressure on ourselves, so I'm not saying that succeeding is a bad thing. Of course, it's a great thing. But then when you don't see failure as an option, then you actually are very hard on yourself and you miss
Yes.
that joy and fun of life.
I think that's right. I think taking a step back, I also believe that success is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, I love that.
What
Yes,
is success? I mean, it depends on the individual. It depends on your
exactly.
values.
Yeah.
Sometimes success is trying something that you might have been afraid to try.
Mm.
Sometimes success is survival.
Yes.
We live in a society where often success is defined just in terms of financial success or fame, but
Mm.
I think that's too limited a definition.
Yeah.
And I think that I prefer the idea that we each individually figure out how we define success, what it means to
Right.
us.
Right.
I think it's a better way to live, and I think it's a healthier way to live.
Exactly. For me, it is freedom. So when I get freedom in my life, like to do what I want to do. For example, I want to, of course, it's not like I'm not living 100% up to it. Like if I want to take a vacation, sometimes I'm not able to do that. But for me, the definition of success is having that absolute freedom. Whatever you want to do in your life, you can do it despite what people would think, what society would say, you know.
Yeah.
When you are just being yourself, of course, you don't have to harm anybody, but then just be yourself, be your authentic self, and don't judge yourself for that.
Yeah, that resonates with me quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Get ready for the ultimate challenge, this or that. Choose fast, trust your instincts, and let's go.
Right. So now I would like to play a game with you. It's called This or That, and this is my favorite game. I play this with every guest on the show. I would give you two choices. You just need to pick one. This tells us about your personality in a very specific way. So that's why we do that. So are you ready?
I am ready.
Mike, 6 companies or one defining one?
6 companies.
Failure that teaches or success that doesn't?
Failure that teaches us.
Silicon Valley or Italy?
Silicon Valley.
The CEO who admits they don't know or the one who always has an answer?
The CEO who admits they don't know.
Write the book or live the story?
Live the story.
Luck or skill, honestly?
Luck.
Strategy or psychology, which actually runs a company?
Psychology that actually runs a company.
Great, you played well. It was pretty quick and fast, and you were very clear. Thank you for being spontaneous.
That was fun. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to
Yes,
do that.
Yes, Mike, every life is a movie and we are the star of yours. This is the theme of the show. So, as your life is a movie, what is the title of that movie?
I would say unexpected consequences.
Would you like to speak a bit about that?
I think that I the best things that have happened to me in my life are things that I didn't plan,
Mm-hmm.
and I've learned to embrace that. When I was a kid, I was very much about planning. I would set goals. I would try to achieve those specific goals. And coming back to our discussion about success, I regarded myself as successful when I achieved the goals I had defined.
Yeah.
But the reality is, when I look back at my life now, the best things are things that were not defined by me.
Mm.
There were things that just happened, and
Yeah.
I listened, and I'm glad I listened. That's the way that's the way I perceive it now. I would add one other thing is that I wrote this book, Failure is an Option. I was recently asked what my next book will be.
Yeah.
The honest answer is my next book is going to be a film.
Oh,
So I really
really?
like the fact that you're focused on the cinematic view of
Interesting.
life,
Yeah.
because that really resonates with me, and that type of storytelling, I think, is
Yeah.
something that really appeals to me.
Exactly, you're right. So, as before we end this, I also would like to talk a bit about the storytelling in the entrepreneurial journey, because
Yeah.
we need to tell a story to the investors, to the team, to the world about the product, about ourselves. And when you are great at that, when you can project the right kind of story at the right time, this also builds a lot of success that can change the game for you. What do you think about it?
Oh, I agree. One of the things I mentioned in the book is I think
Yeah.
the role of CEO has three different pieces. The one piece is what everyone thinks the role is, which is business strategy and
Mm.
operations. The second piece is being a psychologist,
Yeah,
because you have a team of people and you
exactly.
try to motivate them. But the third piece is storytelling. It's
Hmm.
all about telling stories.
It
And I
is.
don't think of that as fictitious stories, or fictional
Of
stories. I
course,
mean,
yeah.
authentic, real stories. But
Yeah,
you're trying always to explain to people what you're doing, why you're doing it, what the opportunity is, what the potential is. And that's customers, that's prospective employees, that's existing employees, that's potential investors. I mean, the list goes on and on.
yeah,
In
yeah.
every case, you're telling a story. And so if you can tell stories that are compelling, you're likely to do much better. And
Absolutely.
I've really taken that to heart as the years have
Yeah,
progressed. And
right.
it informed how I wrote this book. The book is all about storytelling.
Yeah.
And it's 44 stories effectively
Okay.
based on my life, each of
Right.
which illustrates a theme. But the through line is that in every case, I'm telling a story.
Yeah, this is interesting. And I'm sure this must be a very valuable book because what you are talking here is the real uh, things like real ingredients that make a successful business. So it's very interesting that you have written about it in terms of stories that people can understand and use them in their life. So where the book is available, like how can we
It's
get?
available on Amazon. It's available on BN BNNBarnesandNoble.com. It's available on independent book sites. I
Okay,
also have a website, failure-is-an-option.com.
okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. And for those who would like to follow the rest of your movie apart from that book, how can they do that?
Well, they can go to my website, failure-is-an-option.com. I also have a Substack that I recently introduced called Failure is
Okay.
an Option, where they can email me if they want to communicate with me
Yeah.
directly. I'm always thrilled when people reach out,
Right.
and my email is mikegrossman86@gmail.com.
Right. Thank you, Mike. It was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I think one of the best conversations I've had on this show. I really enjoyed and I really resonate what you talk about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure.
This is The Corporate Life. More stories, more insight, more truth. Until the next episode, stay curious. Don't forget to subscribe.